An 85-year-old veteran was struck inside a diner while bystanders remained motionless. 10 minutes later, his son, a Special Forces commander, appeared and altered the situation without drawing any weapons. Walter Jennings habitually sat on the same wooden bench outside Cora's diner every Saturday at midday. Regardless of weather, he arrived wearing his tan windbreaker, his army cap snugly placed over his silver hair, and a simple black cane resting between his knees. Locals in Somerville, Georgia, who noticed him understood not to disturb him as he calmly sipped his coffee and observed the surroundings. He spoke little, and did not need to, for his presence resembled an old street lamp, quiet, steady, and reassuring. Walter seldom recounted his war tales. He served in Korea and Vietnam, suffered shrapnel wounds in both conflicts, and lost comrades along the way. Despite it all, he maintained the routine of walking a mile every morning, and never raised his voice inside the diner even when the waitress forgot to bring sugar. That was why when the Harrow bikers rode up with roaring engines, patched jackets, and boots pounding on the pavement, nobody anticipated trouble. Recently they had been showing up more often. Some regulars lowered their gaze when the group entered, while others avoided the diner altogether. This time they stayed outside and noticed Walter sitting alone on the bench. Their leader was a stocky man in his mid-40s, sunburnt skin, and a barely concealed temper. He stepped forward wearing a black vest adorned with a faded Confederate flag patch stitched on the front. His name tag read, Briggs. Walter did not look up but calmly took another sip. Briggs sneered as he glanced at the worn-out figure and barked, "Aren't you past your prime, Grandpa?" Walter slowly turned his head, his tone calm and steady. "Do you have a problem, son?" Briggs let out a loud, sharp laugh. "A problem? No. I was just wondering why an old black veteran is taking up space where real men eat." The street fell silent. Cora cautiously peeked through the blinds. A man pumping gas across the street stopped what he was doing. Walter gently placed his cup beside him and rose with care. "I fought for this country," he said, "long before you even learned how to ride a bike." Briggs's smile vanished. "You fought for it, huh? And what did you get? A bench and a paper cup?" Walter met his gaze firmly and replied, "I've got enough. Now leave." That should have ended the exchange, but pride often overpowered weakness. Briggs's smirk twisted into something more sinister. "You talk real tough for someone just one push away from a nursing home." Walter did not flinch. "And you talk loud for someone who's never heard gunfire close." Suddenly, Briggs lunged forward without warning. His punch struck Walter's jaw squarely. Walter's cane fell clattering to the pavement as he toppled sideways off the bench. His head hit the curb's edge sharply. A gasp swept through the crowd. Someone yelled, but no one moved. The quiet that followed weighed heavier than the blow itself. Walter lay motionless, blood slowly oozing from beneath his left ear. Briggs stood over him, panting hard, glancing around as if he had won something. No cheers, no laughter came from anyone nearby. Even Walter's own team remained motionless. A teenage girl from the diner nervously reached for her phone, her hands trembling. Nearby, a man in a blue polo crouched close to Walter without touching him. Across the street, a black SUV pulled into the parking lot. The biker failed to notice it at first, but inside that darkened vehicle, Major Travis Jennings was already loosening his seatbelt. What Briggs failed to understand was that by striking an elderly man, he had ignited a fire that would not be easily extinguished. The SUV came to a halt next to the diner's side entrance. As the door swung open, the atmosphere shifted, as if an unseen force had entered and rewritten the rules. Major Travis Jennings did not slam the door or shout or rush anywhere. He simply strode forward, standing 6'1" with broad shoulders and a commanding presence. Still wearing the uniform from a classified exercise near Fort Moe, roughly an hour's flight to the west, his tactical boots and gloves remained attached to his belt. There had been no time to change into civilian clothes. He had expected to enter the diner, embrace his father, maybe share a laugh about Walter ordering the same tuna melt since the 1980s. Instead, he was met with blood on the pavement and the figure responsible for spilling it. Briggs stood over Walter, chest puffed out, eyes darting as he began to sense the crowd was not on his side. Travis came to a stop just 3 feet from his father's body, his gaze fixed on Walter and not the man who had struck him. His voice broke in a way unexpected from a man trained to lead soldiers in battle when he said, "Dad." Walter did not answer. His breathing was shallow and slow. One side of his face was beginning to swell noticeably. His left hand twitched near the cane, but he was unable to reach it. Travis knelt down on one knee, careful not to touch him yet, simply observing him closely. "Dad, it's me. I'm here," he said quietly. Briggs shifted uncomfortably. "What is this? Your son here to rescue you, old man?" Travis rose to his feet and fixed his gaze on Briggs. There was something in that look that made 2 of Briggs's bikers step back. "Did you hit him?" Travis demanded. Briggs lifted his chin defiantly and smirked. "I was just reminding him who's in charge." Travis did not flinch. "If you touch him again, you will not get a second warning." At that moment, a second SUV arrived, bearing black unmarked government plates. The tires crunched as it rolled over the gravel. Then the doors opened simultaneously. 4 soldiers stepped out, moving in a practiced formation with deliberate spacing, their shoulders squared. They were not wearing full combat gear but were close enough, equipped with earpieces and tactical vests. No weapons were drawn, yet every muscle in their bodies conveyed that they were prepared for anything. Travis needed no explanation. These men understood perfectly why they were here. The shortest of them, Staff Sergeant Nolan, spoke first, addressing Travis as Major. "Secure the perimeter," he ordered with a sharp glance. Travis nodded once. Without another word, the soldiers spread out to prevent the situation from escalating. The town had gone silent, and even the traffic at the far end of the street had slowed down. Briggs attempted a laugh, but it fell flat and lifeless. "What are you going to do? Send your little army after me? We haven't even broken any law." Travis moved forward, only inches apart from them. When he said, "You touch my father, this is not just personal, this runs through generations." Briggs tried to hold his gaze but failed. His eyes shifted toward the soldiers. Calmly positioned all around the parking lot, Nolan stood near the diner entrance quietly. Another soldier kept watch at the gas station while the rest scanned the street. There were still no weapons drawn, no shouting. That silence made things feel even more tense. "You do not scare me," Briggs muttered quietly. "You are already scared," Travis answered. "You just do not know how to handle it." The crowd did not cheer or make noise. This was not a moment for celebration. Yet something shifted. For the first time in a long while, people looked at Walter Jennings, not just as an old man or someone they passed by, but as a man whose blood deserved justice, not staining the pavement. One of the bikers whispered, "Briggs, maybe we should leave." "Quiet," Briggs snapped, but it was already too late to save his pride. A dozen phones had started recording, Even the sheriff's nephew, who had recently finished high school, had his camera out from behind the diner register. However, Travis was not here to win a standoff. He was here to lift his father off the ground. Kneeling beside Walter, his eyes carefully searched for any signs of a concussion, fractures, or injuries needing urgent care. The cut along Walter's cheekbone continued to bleed, though it was not a heavy flow. His lip was cracked, and his left eye was beginning to close. Yet he was awake now, just barely. Walter's voice came out rough and husky. "You came." "I always will," Travis replied. Their words were barely audible, but they carried significant weight. Nearby, a middle-aged woman in floral scrubs, likely from the urgent care 2 blocks away, stepped forward holding a small first aid kit she had fetched quickly. Without a word, she handed it to Travis, who accepted it with a thankful nod. No one had dared to approach the biker gang until Travis showed up. Briggs leaned against his Harley, arms folded, trying to seem unaffected, but he was silent now. Not a word was spoken since men in military-style clothing guarded every corner of the parking lot like vigilant sentinels. Travis opened the kit, removed antiseptic wipes, and carefully tended to his father's wound. Walter winced, but did not move. The quiet between them was not oppressive. It was clear they had faced worse situations before, but this one felt different. "He did not like the color of my skin," Walter muttered softly. Travis clenched his jaw but kept his tone even. "He did not like that you stood up." Walter gave a small, crooked smile. "It still hurts like hell. You have always been too tough for yourself." There was a pause as Walter looked around. "Are these your men?" Travis glanced toward his team. Nolan remained standing with his arms behind his back, calm and alert. Private DeWitt was near the street sign, attentive as ever. Corporal Rivas stood near the entrance with Sergeant Harlan in the alley between the diner and the hardware store. "They volunteered," Travis said. Walter blinked, confused, asking, "They came for me?" "No," Travis replied, lightly tapping his father's temple. "They came because of what you stand for." The mood shifted again. Pedestrians on the sidewalk no longer averted their gaze. A few murmured quietly among themselves. A man wearing a Braves cap clutched his phone against his chest, uncertain whether to keep recording or just listen. A younger biker, probably around 19, fidgeted beside his bike. He leaned toward Briggs, whispering, "This is not going to end well, man." Briggs did not reply. Travis rose once more, moving with slow precision. He did not need to shout or make threats. He simply faced the group and spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I want you to consider what kind of person it takes to strike an 85-year-old man in the face. A man who fought in 2 wars so people like you could freely walk these streets." No one answered. "Now think about how little it takes to become that man." Silence remained. Travis stepped forward slightly, explaining it is not courage or power, but weakness disguised as anger. Briggs's eyes shifted from Travis to the others, then to the onlookers. He was unused to this kind of scrutiny. When the crowd does not cheer, when even your own group begins to see you differently, a voice called out from behind the diner. "The sheriff's deputies will be here in 2 minutes, Nolan said, adjusting his earpiece to relay the local response. Travis gave a single nod as Briggs straightened up. "So what now, are you going to accuse me of something that is not my responsibility?" Travis asked. "But I will not have to lift a finger. The world witnessed your actions, and they will remember." Rivas moved closer, holding out a folded piece of olive green military cloth, a spare towel. He handed it to his father, tenderly wiping his lip. Walter let out a dry chuckle. I used to be the one fixing you up. Times evolve, Travis replied. Walter glanced at the biker, still trying to play the tough guy. What remains constant is how cowards always look the same regardless of the year. But Travis was not done, because the one thing stronger than strength is presence. Walter could not decide if it was the blood loss or the humiliation making his head feel so dizzy. He leaned back gently against the bench, pressing the towel to his cheek, and for a moment, the present moment vanished. He was no longer in Somerville but in Da Nang, then Pusan, and later Alabama in 1962. His mind flipped through memories like a faulty projector, gunshots, rain voices shouting over static. A cold hospital cot, his mother's voice from before war ever touched his life. The biker's punch echoed inside his skull like mortar blasts, and he could still sense the heat from a napalm strike. He had fled Vietnam, a burning fire that claimed 2 of his comrades and left him dragging one of them through mud and bodies. He was not supposed to survive all that, but he did, and now he was here on the ground. Walter was bleeding at 85 because someone wearing a patch on his vest could not tolerate the sight of a proud, quiet black man who had lived long enough to understand how far this nation still needed to progress. Walter blinked sharply and saw Travis again. "You okay, Pops?" Travis's voice grounded him. Truly present, his son. The boy he had once taught to tie his shoes. The same boy who used to cry when cartoons ended. Now grown into a man whom people respected, standing with their hands behind their backs. Walter chuckled, producing a deep, rough sound. "Ever tell you about Private Connolly?" he asked. Travis raised an eyebrow. "Which one?" he queried. "The redhead from Minnesota who could not aim worth a damn? Thought he was dying when a bee stung him. Screamed louder than when he got grazed in the leg." Travis smiled slightly. "You're bleeding, and we're talking about bees." Walter coughed. "Just wanted to see if I still had it in me. Storytelling." "You do," Travis replied. "Always did." Another cough, wetter this time, caused Walter to wince. Did not expect to still be fighting battles at this age. "You do not fight at this age," Travis said. "You hold your ground." Walter shifted his gaze, eyes locking on the crowd observing them. Some with sympathy, some with shame, others unsure how to react. "I used to believe that if I survived the fire hoses and the attack dogs, the war zones and the riots, maybe one day I could just sit and drink coffee in peace." Travis did not answer. Walter stared at the blood pooling on the pavement. "That is not how life works, is it?" "No," Travis replied softly. "But we get to decide who we become in the midst of it." The ambulance siren could faintly be heard far away. It was not speeding. No one had called in a panic. They likely informed dispatch that it was not a critical emergency, but simply an elderly man with a split lip. Walter noticed the teenage girl nearby on the sidewalk, perhaps 17, still clutching her phone and recording. Her hands were shaking, yet she continued filming. He gestured toward her. "She is scared and trying to make sense of this," Travis said. "She has never witnessed anything like this before, not up close." Walter leaned his head back against the bench, worn out. "Maybe this is how she learns. The rest of us had to be knocked down to understand." Walter closed his eyes for a moment. He was not about to fall asleep yet, but he let himself rest in the silence. There was nothing left to prove, as he had already demonstrated everything through his service, years, survival, and now, even in pain, He was showing the town and his son that dignity does not perish the moment your body hits the ground. It only fades when you choose to lie there. But Walter was not going to stay down, especially with Travis standing watch beside him and the younger generation observing. Travis sat quietly next to his father, elbows resting on his knees, watching the last drops of blood fall from Walter's chin. The sirens grew louder, signaling the nearby arrival of the local ambulance. Perhaps a police car would come as well, but no one seemed rushed, almost as if they did not want to interrupt this moment. Walter shifted slightly and emitted a low groan as his ribs reminded him he was 85 and still human. Travis looked over at you to make sure you had no signs of a concussion. "I've taken harder hits," Walter muttered quietly. Travis nodded but replied, "That does not mean you earned it." Walter glanced away. Deserves is a strange word. I have witnessed good men fall just for standing in the wrong place. I have also seen bad men live long lives without a single injury. You are not a shadow, Dad. You are the very reason I wear this uniform the way I do. Walter then turned toward him. His eyes were sharp despite the swelling. "Do not start talking like that. It sounds as if I am already gone." "You are not," Travis said. "But something has to change." Walter observed his son thoughtfully. "You believe bringing your squad here was the change?" "I did not bring them just for show," Travis answered. "They were with me. We were debriefing nearby when I received your message. You said noon. When I arrived late, I feared you had already moved ahead without me." Walter smirked. "I was just about to have a tuna melt." Travis nodded. "You always do." Then his voice softened. "But when I arrived and saw you lying in the ground, Dad, I forgot every protocol I ever learned. All I could see was you bleeding and him standing there as if he had just knocked over a trash can instead of a man who bore the weight of this country on his shoulders." Walter remained silent for a moment, looking past his son toward Briggs, who now reclined on his Harley, arms folded, pretending not to listen, but his eyes kept darting back. "I was never afraid of being hit," Walter said. "I have been hit before by fists, by harsh words, by policies designed without people like us in mind. But what truly shook me was—" Walter mentioned seeing familiar faces witnessing the event, people he has known for years. They simply watched, motionless. Travis took a deep breath as they all seemed frozen, unsure how to respond to such blatant injustice. Most individuals feel lost when confronted with wrongdoing in plain sight. Walter nodded quietly, admitting it still hurts. They remained silent as the ambulance finally arrived. 2 paramedics rushed out, carrying their gear. Travis signaled them. Walter was responsive, showing signs of facial injuries and probable bruised ribs, but he stayed conscious. One medic, in her 30s with freckled arms and a wedding band, knelt beside Walter saying, "Sir, we will get you checked out, all right?" Walter calmly dismissed her with a slow wave. "I will go with you, but only after I say this," he added. The medic hesitated and then nodded respectfully. Walter faced Travis again and asked if he thought he should have fought back. Travis paused before replying, "No." He glanced between his father's bruised face and Briggs before explaining, "Because you already struck him far harder than he could ever grasp, and you did not lift even a finger." Walter grinned. "Do you really believe that?" "I do," Travis said firmly. "Look at him. He threw the punch, but now he is shrinking in a town that once let him act wild and untouchable. You stood up by staying down and forcing the whole world to witness it." Walter slowly pushed himself up, stiff and leaning heavily on his cane. "You sound like your mother," he said. Travis smiled softly. "She taught me well." The two men turned once more to face the watching crowd. Walter's lip was still bleeding, but he made no effort to wipe it away. The younger bikers avoided his gaze. Briggs stared down at the ground, chewing the inside of his cheek as if he wanted to say something, but could not find the right words. However, Walter was not looking for an apology. He wanted everyone to remember what they had witnessed and question their own values. The stillness in the parking lot did not break. Instead, it changed into the kind of silence that follows a storm, the uncertain pause when no one knows how to deal with the aftermath left behind. Walter stood tall, his cane firm in hand, with blood drying on his face. He did not flinch, plead, or try to win over the crowd. He simply remained there, like a man who had stood for greater causes before, men who had left too soon for others to understand. Commands shouted in foxholes, the kind of fear that does not come from noise but from memory, filled the air. Briggs moved forward slowly, his hands held slightly out as if to show he no longer wanted a fight. His voice softened almost reluctantly when he said, "I did not mean to." Walter raised a hand, stopping him. "You meant to hit me." Briggs froze. "Yes, I did, but I thought you could take it and still walk away with your head held high." Briggs swallowed hard as a camera flash snapped from behind him. Someone else was filming this moment. The town would be discussing this by dinner time, and likely the entire state by morning. Travis stood next to his father, not towering over him or protecting him, but standing evenly beside him, shoulder to shoulder. "You want to apologize," Travis said. "Then do it without making excuses." Briggs glanced around at the soldiers, the crowd, and the other bikers who now kept their distance from him. His words caught in his throat, and what he managed to whisper was barely clear. "I'm sorry," he muttered. Walter's eyes narrowed. "For hitting me or for getting caught doing it?" Briggs remained silent. "You said I didn't deserve to sit on that bench," Walter continued. "But I earned that spot long before you were even born." Briggs flinched. "Yeah, I get it," he began. But Walter interrupted. "No, you don't, and maybe you never will." There was no shouting, no heightened tension, just harsh truths presented plainly, leaving no room to escape them. One of the bikers, a younger man with a patch that looked freshly sewn on, removed his vest without drawing attention or making a scene. He simply folded it under his arm and walked toward the gas station. Briggs watched him leave. "Loyalty is easy when no one's watching," Travis said. "But true character shines through when the cameras start rolling." The ambulance crew stepped forward once more, and this time Walter did not wave them away. Instead, he gave a slight nod and pointed to the stretcher. "I can walk," he said, "but I'll let you earn your paycheck." As they assisted him into the back, Walter looked at his son. "You riding with me?" Travis shook his head. "I'll follow behind." "Finish a few things here?" Walter nodded. "Don't take too long. Your mama wouldn't like me missing lunch." Travis smiled. "We'll still get your tuna melt, Pops." The doors closed softly. The ambulance pulled away quietly with no sirens, only the faint sound of rubber tires rolling on the asphalt. Travis turned back toward Briggs without stepping closer or raising his voice. He simply met his gaze with the look of a man who understood the true power of words. "You did not just strike a man," Travis said. "You hit a legacy." Briggs lowered his eyes, his voice barely audible as he replied, "Then I suppose I will carry that." Travis answered, because everyone else witnessed it. And that was the undeniable truth. Everyone saw it. Not only the blow, but also the silence that followed, the conscious decision not to respond. The way Walter stood there, bleeding but unshaken, that was what people would remember. The sheriff eventually arrived, stepping out of his cruiser with measured movements. He glanced at Travis, then at Briggs, and finally at the phones recording everything. "Are you pressing charges?" he asked Travis quietly. "I am not the one who was struck," he replied. The sheriff nodded, sighed, and turned to Briggs. "Come on, let's have a talk." Briggs did not resist. He followed without objection. His boots felt heavier now, but the true consequence was not the law. It was bearing the weight of the town's judgment and what it said about him. By late afternoon, the blood on the pavement had dried into a dark rust color. A slight wind stirred, scattering napkins across the parking lot. Cora appeared, carrying a mop and a bucket full of soapy water. She said little and began scrubbing near the bench where Walter had sat inside the diner. The TVs switched from morning news to college football, yet no one paid attention to the screens. Eyes remained lowered, and voices were subdued not from fear, but rather from contemplation. The door chimed as Travis Jennings entered without removing his vest or taking a seat. He simply stood near the entrance, scanning the faces he had known since childhood. "I am not here to deliver a speech," he said, and heads lifted. "But I need you all to grasp something. What happened out there today was not just about my father. It was not about some drunk with a patch trying to act tough." He paused, allowing his words to sink in. "It was about what we allow to happen and how long we stay silent. When someone crosses a boundary, no one interrupted, not even the elderly men who usually voiced their opinions from the back booth." Travis drew a breath. "You don't need a uniform to be brave. Sometimes courage is simply standing up despite your voice trembling." A woman near the counter gave a slow nod. She had been at the gas station earlier, watching from across the street, her eyes fixed on Travis as if she wanted to speak, but knew it was not necessary because it was already said. Outside, the news van finally pulled up. A small station from Macon. The cameraman began setting up his tripod, while the reporter adjusted her jacket and smoothed her hair. Travis stepped outside before they could enter. "We are not doing this for a show," he told the reporter firmly. "But if you want to talk about something, talk about the man who was knocked down and still stood taller than anyone else on this street." She blinked, surprised by his resolve. "You are his son," Travis declared firmly. "Major Travis Jennings." That name stuck. It would make headlines the very next day. Veteran attacked outside a local diner. His son, a military officer, speaks out. Videos circulated on social media, showing phone recordings and freeze frames of Walter sitting up, blood staining his shirt, yet dignity shining through his eyes. However, the story was never really about the viral moment, but about what lingered long after the views disappeared. Back in the hospital, Walter rested in a calm room bathed in gentle fluorescent light. A nurse had replaced his ice pack with a fresh one and adjusted his bed to a more comfortable angle. His vital signs were stable, only needing a few stitches and perhaps a night's rest. Physically, he would recover, but mentally he was still processing everything. A knock at the door brought Travis in, carrying a brown paper bag from Cora's. "I told you I would bring your tuna melt." Walter gave a faint smile, even with the chill in his body. That should hit the spot. Travis pulled up a chair next to the bed and handed over the sandwich. "The town has been strangely quiet since you left." "Quiet isn't always a good sign," Walter responded. "Maybe it means they are thinking." Let's hope they are thinking the right thoughts, Travis said confidently. They will, he added. Or they will at least remember what you did. Walter chewed slowly, then glanced over thoughtfully. Do you think anyone will actually change? Travis reflected on the sheriff escorting Briggs to his vehicle, not handcuffed, but clearly restrained, on the girl still standing at the curb after the cameras had gone, and the biker who removed his vest without looking back. Yeah, Travis agreed softly. A few might. And that is where it begins. Walter took another bite, saying, That is all we have ever asked for, is it not? Outside the hospital window, the sun sank low behind the pine trees, casting long shadows over the parking lot. Another Saturday almost slipped away, but this one would not be forgotten. Not by the man who stood firm, not by the son who came by, and not by a town that could no longer pretend it had not witnessed what had happened. Yet one moment remained, one instance that would bring meaning to everything. The following morning, Somerville remained unchanged, same quiet streets, same old rusted pickups rattling along Main Street, and the church bells from First Baptist still echoed through the town. But something felt different. It was unspoken, at least not voiced yet, but sensed in the longer eye contact people exchanged, or how no one averted their gaze when passing Walter Jennings's bench. At 9:03 in the morning, that bench was not empty. Walter sat there again, bruised, with a stitched-up cane in one hand and a steady cup of coffee in the other. His cheek was swollen and his lip covered with tape. Still, he was there wearing the same windbreaker and cap. No fuss, just a quiet, determined presence. A young boy, no older than 8, stopped while walking with his mother to look at him. Walter gave a small nod. The boy shyly raised his hand in a half-wave. His mother paused for a moment, then gently pushed him forward, whispering, "Say thank you." Without hesitation, the boy said, "Thank you for serving." Walter nodded once more and replied, "You are welcome." Across the street, a young man named Travis stood outside the hardware store, observing quietly. He had not intended to return so soon, yet seeing his father there once more made the choice for him without hesitation. Slowly, he crossed the street and sat down beside Walter, remaining silent. "You did not have to come back today," Walter said. Travis simply shrugged and replied, "It did not feel right to be anywhere else." They remained in silence for a while, surrounded by the crisp scent of autumn. The leaves were dry and fragile, and the wind whispered softly, unnoticed by any fanfare. Walter took a sip from his cup and said, "Do you know what I kept thinking about last night?" Travis looked up and asked, "What is that?" Walter pointed out, "The line." Travis glanced sideways and asked, "Which one?" Walter answered, "The one that man crossed, the invisible boundary people pretend is not there until someone steps over it." Travis nodded slowly. Walter went on, "It is not drawn with chalk. It is in how you treat others, in the way you speak to them. It lies in whether you see a person's value or simply an obstacle in your path." He sighed deeply. "That line has been crossed many times in my life, and I have crossed it myself. No one is flawless, but there is a difference between an isolated mistake and a troubling habit. That man yesterday did not just stumble accidentally. He marched right across that boundary as if it held no weight." Travis rubbed his hands together thoughtfully. "I have spent many years teaching men how to fight, But recently I've started to think that true strength may not lie in the battles we fight, but in what we choose to defend." Walter smiled warmly at him. "Your mother would have appreciated hearing that. She always claimed you were the toughest man she had ever known. Travis said I was not strong." Walter glanced at the dressing on his cheek and answered, "I was merely weary of concealment." They both laughed softly, the kind of laughter shared between people who have witnessed the same harsh realities. From down the road, the sheriff's cruiser rounded the corner and stopped near the diner. Sheriff Langley stepped out holding his hat. He came without a backup force, for he did not require one, and moved forward with measured respect. "Good morning, Walter Major." Walter lifted his cup slightly. Sheriff Langley cleared his throat and said, "I just left Briggs's house. He has agreed to issue a public apology at Town Square 3 days from now." Walter raised one eyebrow. Voluntary Langley confirmed it took little persuasion. "I believe he saw himself in those videos, did not like the man," reflected back. Walter drank again. People can change when faced with humiliation, but that does not always mean they mature. Langley made no objection. "But it is a beginning." Travis stood and said, "We will attend." Langley tipped his hat. That was all I needed to hear. After leaving, Walter surveyed the parking lot. A new layer of paint had been put on the curb. Someone from the community had cleaned away the bloodstain before dawn and left a modest bunch of flowers by the bench. No message, no name, simply a mark of honor. Walter tapped his cane on the pavement. "Do you know what stings the most?" He spoke softly now. "It is not the blow itself, but the long time I spent sitting here thinking maybe this place had changed enough so I would not have to stay alert." Travis did not reply immediately. Then he said perhaps it had not happened before, but maybe now it finally would. Walter looked at him, his son, his guardian, his pride, and then declared, "Let's hold him to that." They sat side by side, representing 2 generations of resilience and strength in the town of Somerville. The town would remember not only the strike or the cameras, but the choice a man made to refrain from retaliating. How his son stood unwavering without throwing a single punch, and how silence, when wielded wisely, can resonate more powerfully than any act of violence ever could. Sometimes, crossing certain boundaries forces you to decide who you truly are. If this story moved you, made you think, feel, or reflect, then share it, discuss it with someone, and subscribe for more narratives that do not just pass time, but carry a message worth remembering.